Making headlines for this week of 13th of March. Russian bombshell. Russian media called to stand by for announcement from the Kremlin over the weekend. Bye-bye Bibi. Pre-election polls show Netanyahu may be on his way out as leader of Israel. UK abandons US. Britain moves to be the first Western country to join China's new international bank. And accepting ETs. Stephen Greer offers that many are just like us, only more evolved.
With news around, upon, within, and beyond our planet, the program making disclosure official. This is Cosmic Vision News. Here is Jeffrey West.
Greetings and blessings to all. Is a bombshell announcement about to come out from Russia? There have been rumors circulating over the last few days that Russian President Vladimir Putin may be in ill health, or perhaps also that he may even have died. At this time, they are unsubstantiated rumors. He was apparently to attend a meeting in Kazakhstan on the 15th, but canceled. However, an article in Russian appearing on the Velasti.net news website on March 13th posted the following, and I have translated it from Russian, so it is a bit rough. The article made the following announcement. The Kremlin is preparing a major announcement. Journalists are asked not to depart for the weekend. According to a source in the press service of the President of Russia, a major announcement is being prepared for the near future, and for this reason, heads of relevant media are asked to be ready in the next few days for a possible press conference. This is indirectly confirmed by the CEO of the Center for Political Information, Politinfo, Alexei Mukhin. Mukhin also did not deny reports that President Putin is currently incapacitated. Guys, you now need to gather for the president, he wrote in his Twitter. The question, whether he confirms rumors about Putin, Mukhin's reply was no comment. Mukhin also asked the weekend staff at media outlets to be in place for something important. So, it seems something big is really about to happen. Okay, I'm going to offer my own thoughts on this. Putin is being squeezed by the U.S. and being targeted on numerous levels. He is in the process of rolling out a new international banking system and structures that are directly pushing the U.S. dollar out as global reserve currency, and therefore eliminating one of the major sources of profit for the global cabal other than war. He is allegedly sitting on explosive satellite intel that conclusively ends the 9/11 cover-up once and for all, exposing the cabal completely. He is also sitting on his own information about the existence of our galactic families, knowledge that will end the cover-up of technologies that could help our planet. He is holding all the cards right now, despite what the Western media is saying. Maybe, just maybe, he has been targeted by energetic devices that have made him sick. Maybe he has strategically created a scenario that would cause the media to speculate that he is sick or that something has happened to him, so that when he calls this conference, if he calls it, people will be expecting a health announcement, but something else may come, a potential bombshell of information that will finally shatter the cabal power structure, or announce the disclosure of our galactic families. All this coming just ahead of the Pluto-Uranus square. If I was Putin, in the position I am currently in, being squeezed by the U.S. and the global banking cabal while trying to implement a new system, I would probably create a scenario where people might think I am sick or perhaps even dead, to take all speculation away from the topic of the real information I may want to expose. If there is any truth to illness rumors, Putin has nothing to lose by coming clean on everything. On the other hand, holding the cards that he is holding, it would not be a very wise move by the global cabal to target Putin's health at this time because they would be effectively sealing their own fate. Being a very intelligent man and human being, he has no doubt covered all the angles on what needs to be done should something happen to him. Regardless of whether or not his health has been affected to any degree, the moves are now on to shut down the global cabal, and Putin may either be alive to do it himself, or the Hail Mary path of information will be revealed to the world by staff in the event that the global cabal has taken his life. I personally am holding the belief that he has set up this scenario so that the global media will focus on the issue of his health instead of speculating on the other more explosive issues that he doesn't want the Western media digging into just yet. If people think he may be out of the picture or incapacitated, less effort may be put into the preparation of something that could postpone or take the wind out of the significance of what may be about to be released. Whatever may or may not be about to unfold, we hold the energies that whatever is revealed will be for the highest good of humanity, our planet, and our galactic families in moving forward with the global changes. In other geopolitical news, one of the other bigger stories of the week arguably centers around the outcome of the March 17th election in Israel. The Ides of March, being the 16th, when Caesar was assassinated, is also approaching, and the energies of the Ides of March may fall upon the political career of Benjamin Netanyahu. We are also approaching, on the 16th, 17th, a very strong, powerful astrological alignment, the Uranus-Pluto square, and this will be briefly looked at a bit later in the newscast. The impact of this event, however, appears to be manifesting on various different levels around the world, not the least of which is the coming election in Israel that could see the removal of a leader whom many around the world, and even from many within his own country, appear to have grown very weary. Reuters news service via the Huffington Post on March 12th wrote that Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu launched a last-minute media blitz on Thursday to counter what appears to be a rising tide of support for his main opponent in next week's election, the centrist Zionist Union. The latest opinion polls show momentum shifting to Zionist Union after weeks of running neck and neck with Netanyahu's right-wing Likud, and the premier again warned voters who have abandoned his party for like-minded challengers that without their votes he could lose. Another Huffington Post article on the 12th noted that in previous campaign ads, Netanyahu has attacked Herzog as too weak to lead Israel, warning that he would allow Iran to obtain nuclear weapons and surrender an unacceptable amount of territory to the Palestinian Authority. Herzog, however, claims that his slight lead in the polls indicates that Israeli voters are fed up with Netanyahu's security-focused agenda and want a leader who will address domestic economic concerns. It seems that Netanyahu is reaping what he has sown, although he is not taking accountability for it. On March 11th, David Blair, writing for the London Telegraph, reported that Netanyahu claimed to detect a worldwide effort to remove him from power on Tuesday, as polls suggested that he faces defeat in the midst of the upcoming election. If it is coming from around the world, it is also coming from within his own country. An Associated Press article via the Talking Points Memo website on March 7th reported that former chief of Israel's Mossad spy agency on Friday rejected claims made by Netanyahu in his contentious address to Congress about Iran's nuclear program. Meir Dagan served as Mossad chief until January 1st of 2011. Last week, Dagan told an Israeli daily that the person who has caused the greatest strategic damage to Israel on the Iranian issue is the Prime Minister. The people of Israel are apparently also making their voices heard. Several articles have appeared online reporting over the past week there have been protests that have numbered in the tens of thousands of people who no longer desire to see Netanyahu as the leader of the country. Israel's Haaretz news website, in an article by Jonathan Lees on March 15th, reported that officials within the Likud party appear to have given up, and the blame has been placed on Netanyahu. Lees writes, Likud officials aren't waiting for the election results. On Wednesday, following less than favorable polls, senior officials labeled the election campaign a failure and blamed Netanyahu for the party's poor showing in the polls ahead of Election Day. The Haaretz website unfortunately requires a subscription, so it is not possible to read the full articles. There is a commentary offering on Haaretz by Anshel Pfeffer, writing on why Israelis are tired of Netanyahu. In the small piece of text that is visible, he sums it up as follows. Voters know normalcy is an illusion, but they want a leader who can give them a few days of peace without talking about constant vigilance and regional deterrence. If that could be worded another way, it could be that the people of Israel would rather focus on what they want to experience as opposed to manifesting that which they no longer desire to experience. Another commentary by Chemi Chalev notes that how Netanyahu loaded the political gun that is now pointing against his head. He writes that Netanyahu could have called for early elections in August last year when his approval ratings were sky high, rather than in December when they were nosediving back to earth. He could have thrived on the nationalistic winds that swept over Israelis over the course of a stormy summer, rather than wither away in the shadow of the indifference and frustration that mark this winter of discontent. These are the nature of the times of change that we are now in. Corruption and crimes are being exposed at the highest level, and any who are not serving the highest good of humanity and our planet at this time appear to be at the receiving end of this exposure that is ultimately pushing for their removal from global service, one way or the other. Assuming for a moment that Netanyahu's time in office has come to an end, it will be interesting to see if the elected party has the votes and the power to implement what appears to be the will of the people in ending the conflict with Palestine. What will also be interesting to note is how the reaction of leaders of several countries who have been particularly vocal in their support for Netanyahu, particularly Canada's Stephen Harper, to see if they will suddenly change their foreign policy to suit the will of a new Israeli leadership, and whether or not the lobby groups will continue to have the influence that they once had. Over to Greece now. What may originally have appeared to be the surrender of the new Greek government to the heads of the EU central banks may not be exactly what it seemed. According to an article on Bloomberg News on March the 8th, Greece's provisional agreement with creditors to avert a default started to crack as European officials said the country's latest proposals fell far short of what was put forward 2 weeks ago, and Greek ministers floated the prospect of a referendum if their reforms are rejected. At the moment, it appears that the people of Greece are more than ready to deal with whatever hardships come from rejecting the EU bankers. In essence, they would rather do their time in economic jail than play ball with their enslavers. The article continues. Varoufakis said on the weekend, that's Finance Minister Yanis Varoufakis, said on the weekend that if the country's creditors raise requests that aren't acceptable to the government, then the people of Greece may have to decide on how to break the deadlock. Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras also signaled the referendum option is being considered. If we were to hold a referendum tomorrow with the question, do you want your dignity or a continuation of this unworthy policy, then everyone would choose dignity regardless of difficulties that would accompany that decision, Tsipras told Der Spiegel magazine in an interview published on Saturday. Tsipras is walking a tightrope between sticking to his election pledges, which found resonance in a country with a 26% unemployment rate, and avoiding default and a possible exit from the euro region. The last time a Greek leader mooted the idea of a referendum, it didn't go down very well in the Euro region. Former Prime Minister George Papandreou suggested his people would have a say on the bailout agreement he'd reached in October of 2011. Within a month, he'd lost his job and a new interim government was in place. The will of the people is reflecting in the polls as well. The article noted an opinion poll taken on March 7th found that support for the government of Alexis Tsipras had fallen from about 83 to 64%. Based on the history of Greece, that the people are willing to toss out politicians who do not act in the interests of the people, it would seem that the wise choice politically would be to stand up to the bankers and tell them to take their fraudulent loans and go back home, and then begin working together domestically to create self-sustainable solutions that will put food on the table and slowly begin to empower the people to do more. In financial news, a few stories to look at for this week. One of the more noticeable changes taking place for those who are willing to look for it seems to be that the United States is no longer getting its way on many geopolitical and geoeconomic issues. Whereas historically the U.S. had the financial and military clout to force countries and leaders into submission to whatever agreement was necessary at the time, this no longer seems to be happening. A few leaders and an increasing number of countries are starting to find the voices to speak out against the oppression of shadow governments linked to the global banking cabal. The U.S. campaign against Russia has been failing on numerous levels, from Ukraine to the new banking systems being brought online by Russia and China, the increase in international trade in national currencies, particularly between Russia and China, that are not done through the U.S. dollar, and even attempts to shut out Russia from the international money transfer system, SWIFT, is also failing. It seems that the U.S. is no longer able to force organizations to impose sanctions upon Russia, and in fact, organizations appear to be taking steps that are in direct opposition to the desires of the U.S. cabal groups. An article by Simon Black, appearing on the Sovereign Man website on March 11th, wrote that for the last several months, the U.S. government has been doing everything it can to torpedo the Russian economy, as well as Vladimir Putin's standing within his own country. The economic nuclear option is to kick Russia out of the international banking system, and the U.S. government has been vociferously pushing for this. Specifically, the U.S. government wants to kick Russia out of SWIFT, short for the Society of Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunications. Bottom line, being part of SWIFT is critical to conducting business with the rest of the world. And if Russia gets kicked out of SWIFT, it would be a disaster. Now, SWIFT is technically organized as a cooperative society and governed by a board of directors. There are 25 available board seats, and each seat is allocated for a 3-year term to a specific country. On March 9th, not only did SWIFT not kick Russia out, but they announced that they were actually giving a board seat to Russia. This is basically the exact opposite of what the U.S. government was pushing for. Black goes on to point out in his article that plans that China are also putting together for their own system to compete with SWIFT, a system called CIPS, the China International Payment System. It is being set up and marketed as a brand new way to conduct global banking transactions and communications without having to go through the U.S. Black writes that the system should be ready to go later this year. Make no mistake, this is the beginning of the end of the U.S. dollar's global hegemony. It's time to stop hoping that it won't happen and time to start preparing for it. An article on RT on March 11th added that it is the first time Russia has had a seat on the 25-member board of directors of the SWIFT group since it joined in 1989. In August of 2014, EU leaders had been trying to use the interbank system as part of their anti-Russian sanctions, pushing SWIFT to disconnect Russia from the system. However, Belgium-based SWIFT didn't bow to pressure as it had no authority to make sanctions decisions. At the end of last year, the Central Bank of Russia, the CBR, launched an alternative to SWIFT for domestic payments, which was part of a broader move to get away from Western financial dominance. The new service allows credit institutions to transmit messages in a SWIFT format through the central bank to all of Russia's regions without restrictions. So whatever the strategies are that are being cooked up by the global banking cabal to maintain their power and control, everything they try to do seems to keep falling apart on various levels. The options are now there. Russia has been granted more recognition and power within the U.S.-dominated system. It has its own SWIFT system of banking transactions for Russia and for Russian regions and neighboring states, and there will be the CIPS system starting up from China. At the end of the day, it will ultimately mean increased isolation of U.S. influence and the demise of the U.S. dollar as a global reserve currency. There are many who know and understand that numerology, astrology, and astronomy have varying degrees of significance within the Chinese culture. Business transactions are often timed to suit more auspicious days. It may or may not be synchronistic that Russia and China have indicated that their trading in the ruble-yuan futures will begin on what is claimed to be the final day of the Pluto-Uranus square, symbolic of the waning power of the global cabal and the rise of the new system that will ultimately replace it. An RT article on March 12th writes that Moscow's trading in ruble-yuan futures will begin on March 17th, with the currency pair expected to become the third most popular by volume, says Moscow Exchange Deputy Chairman Andrei Shemetov. The number of tools that allow bidders to hedge their currency risks is currently not enough. That's why the Moscow Exchange offered to introduce a new hedging instrument as quickly as possible. Futures on the yuan-ruble currency pair, Shemetov said on Thursday, as quoted by the TASS news agency. We hope that in the near future this tool will take the third position on the futures market and will allow producers to hedge their currency risks and increase the trade turnover between Russia and China, he said, adding that in the spot market, the ruble-yuan currency pair is already the third most popular in terms of volume. The circulation of the Chinese currency has recently increased tenfold, according to Shemetov. The Moscow Exchange hopes the futures will be liquid enough so manufacturers and suppliers can increase trade turnover between Russia and China. In October of 2014, the Moscow Exchange and the Bank of China signed a cooperation agreement to expand mutual settlements in national currencies. The step was made to reduce dependence on the U.S. dollar in bilateral trade and move away from Western financial dominance. On the international scene, the U.S. is only increasingly continuing to lose its international clout and power, as we heard moments ago. The U.S. is slowly beginning to lose its allies as well, as more and more countries see the writing on the wall and are making their moves to secure a more stable future. The BRICS Post reported on March 13th that, overlooking U.S. censure, the UK has announced its decision to join China's Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, or AIIB, becoming the first major Western country to apply for membership. I am delighted to announce today that the UK will be the first major Western country to become a prospective founder member of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, which has already received significant support in the region, said UK Finance Minister George Osborne on Thursday, the 12th. Joining the AIIB at the founding stage will create an unrivaled opportunity for the UK and Asia to invest and grow together, he added. CVN reported in October of last year the establishment of the AIIB to compete with the World Bank. The new bank has over $100 billion in capital for infrastructure projects. Over 20 nations, including China and India, Cambodia, Kazakhstan, Kuwait, Malaysia, Pakistan, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam have signed on to the new bank. The article reports the UK will be joining discussions later this month with the other founding members, according to a UK government statement. An article on the Malaysian Insider News website reported Finance Minister Osborne as saying that joining the bank would boost the country's push to foster business and investment ties with countries in the region, chief among them, China. In what may appear to be a rather hypocritical statement, the article also notes that a spokesman for the White House National Security Council said the United States had concerns about whether the AIIB would have sufficiently high standards on governance and environmental and social safeguards. The way the Western media compartmentalize stories and issues, it is harder for people to see how issues are connected and interconnected. Given the long history of the U.S.-UK relations, a choice like this may be interpreted as both bad and good depending upon the perspective chosen. With other countries starting to distance themselves and their foreign policies from the U.S., it could be argued, perhaps even convincingly, that even though the U.S. is desperately trying to isolate Russia on the global scene, it seems that the U.S. is joining Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu in becoming increasingly more isolated in the world. In general news, CVN listeners may recall a story last year that surfaced shortly after the separation of Crimea from Ukraine in a democratic vote that overwhelmingly saw the people voting to secede from Ukraine. The appointment of one position in particular drew a phenomenal amount of international interest, where older men refused to take the position of chief prosecutor in the Crimean region. One name was put forth, and the individual accepted the calling. It was 33-year-old Natalia Poklonskaya who moved into the position, despite the fear that caused other men to withdraw from accepting. She became an overnight sensation with her looks, but also with fans in Japan who created Pokemon animations of Poklonskaya. As she approaches her first year in office, it should be noted that she is still alive and in her position, but this does not mean that there have not been threats. An RT article on the 11th of March writes the following. The chief prosecutor of Russia's Crimean Republic says Ukrainian law enforcers threatened her with prison and death for accepting the post, but failed to make her fear them. Agents from the Ukrainian Prosecutor General's office called me and threatened me, said they would throw me in prison, that they would kill me and tear me into pieces, Natalia Poklonskaya told TASS in an interview just before the completion of her first year in office. The Supreme Legislature of the Crimean Republic appointed Poklonskaya to the post of chief prosecutor on March 11, 2014. They said openly and directly that if I quit the Crimean prosecutor's office, that very moment they would take it as a voluntary decision to stop criminal activities. They added that a van with a crack squad was already on its way to arrest me and they would throw me into a prison cell, she told reporters. I replied that I would rather be in prison than work for fascists. Poklonskaya also revealed previously undisclosed details of her appointment to the position, saying that she had received a proposal from then Crimean Prime Minister Sergei Aksyonov, who had known her for only a few days. At first, the Crimean legislature had approved another candidate for this post, but the man turned down the offer at the very last moment. At the time, Poklonskaya probably had no idea what was about to happen to her world. She noted to the Prime Minister when asked that she was prepared to serve in whatever capacity the people of the Republic required of her. She was quoted as saying, "I had no fear. I was about to assume great responsibility and I decided to shrug off any fear. I could succumb to it later. I wanted to complete the work and fear only afterwards. We needed to do a lot to mobilize the people and show them that we were supporting the right cause." How marvelous it is to find this kind of courage and strength within a woman in a position of power in a country, regardless of whether or not you support one side or the other, or none at all. It is noteworthy of the strength of women in positions of power who are ready to stand up for their ideals and face possible consequences. I stand alongside Ms. Poklonskaya in her feelings and her convictions against serving the interests of the global banking cabal. I want to be clear that this statement is not one of supporting either Russia or Ukraine, but supports the removal of the group of people outside of both countries that are responsible for all the harm that has been caused directly and indirectly by them. I support Ukrainians and I support Russians who are aware of this and wanting to stop the negative outside influences by this group. There will surely be some CVN listeners who place little or no faith at all in astrological events and their energetic impacts on Earth and on humans individually. This perspective is to be honored and respected. If you happen to be one of those, I kindly ask you to set aside this particular story and do not necessarily have to accept it as truth for your current moment of now. There is an astrological effect coming up very shortly, beginning actually and has been happening at this time, that is comparable to the awakening of baby boomers during the 1960s. It may be worth noting some of the effects at this time, as there appears to be a number of geopolitical and geoeconomic events taking place that are shaking the foundations of the societal structures we once knew. A blog article by Meg Benedicte around 11th of March shares some of the shifts that can be expected with the current alignment of Pluto and Uranus coming to a full square at this time. Benedicte writes the following. On March 16th, 17th, depending on the time zone, will be the final Uranus-Pluto square, initiating more sustainability in all areas of life on planet Earth. This square revisits the themes of the Uranus-Pluto conjunctions of the 1960s and the counterculture revolution and protests against the controlling, destructive establishment. Society has reached the no-pass zone of global pollution, war, poverty, and pestilence. The rising tide of human desire eschews violence, corruption, prejudice, and inequality. We will see more and more evidence of changing trends and populist acceptance of diversity. This last Uranus-Pluto cardinal square will be felt constantly throughout 2015 and 2016. For the past 3 years, the Uranus-Pluto square held us suspended in a tense hinge point between progress and destruction. The dual spin polarity created immense stress between those who are contracting, conserving energy, holding on to the past, versus those who are expanding, progressing, and releasing the past. This escalating tension will unlock after March 16th, 17th, with the completion of the exact square, opening the gates for a different future outcome. It resembles a release valve, unlocking all pent-up pressure in a burst of force, so that all stuck energy may flow forward again. This cosmic pressure release will help us purge any remaining toxic sludge, karma, ego, entanglement with the mind matrix. Adding to the square's forceful release is Mars, joining Uranus at 15 degrees in Aries, stepping into the 10th Pluto-Uranus square today. Warrior Mars represents masculine assertion and action, so we could see an aggressive push for change on the global stage or in our personal interactions. This carries an accidental warning effect. Watch your tempers, breathe deeply, and maintain your still point during this volatile time. The waxing square this month acts like spin point acceleration of the revolutionary freedom fighting started in the 1960s. Humanity has the opportunity now to shift from a warring, divisive world into a new paradigm of caring connection. Most of the baby boomer system busters were activated at the initial Uranus-Pluto conjunctions in Virgo during the revolutionary 1960s. We carry within our hearts a pioneering spirit that is passionate about freedom, equality, healthy living, expanding consciousness, and service to the greater good. Our energy field pulses with catalytic purpose. It is anti-institution, anti-patriarchal, anti-war, and anti-power elite. We vibrate with unity consciousness. We are the embodiment of the revolutionary New Earth. Our time has come to take more direct action as the square opens the floodgates for change and transformation. Not only are we experiencing deep inner change in our own psyches, but also witnessing massive overhaul of our planetary systems. That which can no longer support progress will fade away. As the galactic alignment streams new photonic consciousness into our minds, hearts, and DNA, many of us are gradually mutating into more advanced humans. The evolutionary transformation occurs in the energy body chakra pillar as divine sentient intelligence recodes our thoughts, our biology, as well as the crystalline Merkaba light body. Those who are awake and actively receptive to the light infusion are gradually morphing into telepathic, semi-solid divine humans. Those who are asleep and unaware of the cosmic ascension will require additional time in polarity to learn life lessons of unity consciousness. End quote. It is worth noting the mistakes that have been made this month by people aligned to the Zionist agenda. Israeli PM Netanyahu making the mistake to speak to the U.S. Congress, and now he is saying that just because the stunt didn't work, that the world is now ganging up on him to have him removed from power. The Republican Party in the U.S., which strongly supported Netanyahu's presence, had a group of its members in the Senate write a letter to the head of Iran attempting to influence the negotiations of a nuclear weapons agreement. This letter is now causing a backlash even from within the party, as senators begin to realize the consequences of what they have done and how it will affect them and their party. There are numerous other examples of truth and revelations coming forth to expose various levels of corruption, crimes, and areas where humans have not been serving for the highest good of humanity. And all of this will continue to be exposed over the coming months and year. All of this is happening right now, as are the movements toward a new financial system and a different economic model outside of the U.S. dollar and the control of the Fed Reserve System and the Rothschild-controlled central banks. In disclosure-related news this week, to mention the existence of our galactic families, or extraterrestrials, evokes certain images in the minds of different people. In many cases, sadly, those images are related to fear. However, even among the believers, there exist those who do not fully understand the nature of the existence of our galactic families. The stories that have been passed down over centuries in numerous cultures have spoken of our galactic families, or sky people, or some other term. Some traditions that experienced such interactions without having stories to interpret and understand the interactions considered the visitors to be magical, or perhaps even gods of some kind. A workshop seminar given by Dr. Stephen Greer touches upon a bit of this understanding. The following was posted in YouTube on February the 9th and appears to be a fairly recent workshop. In this workshop, entitled The Crossing Point of Light, Greer addresses the intelligence of our galactic families, or at least those of whom he has at least some degree of knowledge and familiarity, as well as a few other topics.
So that means that there need to be a core of us who are willing to put ourselves out there to be sincerely, with a pure heart, without fear or prejudice, ambassadors to these civilizations, because they are out there. And you know what? They're waiting. Man, I think they've been less than pleased with so far the response on balance that humans have had towards them, because it's either been denial or fear or xenophobia or frank hostility. I mean, the Roswell event was actually an electromagnetic system going off that caused these two craft to hit each other and collide and crash. they turned this thing on, boom, and these two craft that were going along, one sort of exploded right there northwest of Roswell. The other one descended and kind of cracked in half or broke up near Socorro, and that's where they got the ET that was alive out of it. So there are two ships. But unfortunately, that was a terrible event. It was a violent event. And a lot of people say, well, can't the ETs avoid that if they have all these abilities? I said, no. Just because they have advanced technologies does not make them omniscient. So here's another mistake everyone makes. They conflate advanced civilization or more advanced civilization with being godlike. Don't make that mistake. They're just people like us, but very, very advanced. Now, they may have IQs of 450, so I'm a moron by comparison. Nevertheless, it doesn't mean that they become infallible. Infallibility rests with divinity and the unbounded being, and that's it. Anything this side of it is subject to failure and error, even the archangels. So you just keep that in mind as you look at this. There's not infallibility assigned just because it's very, very advanced. So we need to take a step back and say, okay, these are a very advanced civilizations. Some of them may be, I think are, thousands of years. Many of them are hundreds of thousands to millions of years more developed, socially, spiritually, technologically, than Homo sapiens are. Nevertheless, they're still people. Now, there are people that are very, very advanced, and there are people, some of them are so advanced that they could be mistaken as gods in sort of ancient archaeology and the ancient astronaut sort of concepts. I mean, if you have something that appears like that can appear, dematerialize, rematerialize, go straight through objects, it would look like something metaphysical and spiritual. And so there is the beginning of the conflation of very advanced civilizations and technologies with the mythology that becomes sort of a catechism and misunderstanding. So we need to be careful not to make that mistake. We need to say, oh, okay, childhood's end. Let's understand this and approach these civilizations as really advanced civilizations, but because we are conscious and become in this state of universal consciousness, in that sense, equal. Totally 100% equal, even though we haven't developed all the fine points of functioning yet. I mean, we're more dysfunctional than functional, I think you all agree, as a species. But, you know, we can evolve to a higher level of function through conscious development and evolution. And these civilizations understand that. I think, of course, the big concern of the last 75 years has been, we start detonating nuclear bombs and hydrogen bombs in the atmosphere and doing things to destroy the biosphere and the oceans. You begin to see, as one British intelligence guy told me, it's like we kicked a hornet's nest because a red flag went up over the planet after we started detonating atomic weapons that, wow, these people have kind of gotten off the reservation are an existential threat to themselves and potentially others. So that's a perspective I want to bring for just a minute. In the heart of compassion of the Buddha, as it were, is how might humans be viewed? Okay, in the last 100 years, we've killed around 200 million people in warfare and continue to do so. Well, that's the population of many of these planets that we just wiped out in a couple generations through fighting over what? An economic system, a religious system, this system, that system. But then you combine that, so it's no longer with swords and maces and even muskets. It's with thermonuclear weapons. And in covert programs, these rather fearsome scalar electromagnetic weapons based on these very advanced transdimensional sciences. So I think that these civilizations are correct, have some deep concern, and I think they need also to have people scattered around the world, everywhere, who understand these issues and will go out calmly, but with a depth of understanding and a depth of experience, and attempt to make contact that's peaceful and mutually beneficial, which is the whole gist of the CE5 initiative, the Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind initiative. And a close encounter of the fifth kind is simply when humans say, I'm going to make contact as a diplomat and initiate it and allow it to continue, however way it flows. And it may be in this dimension, or it may be transdimensional. It may be in thought. It may be in part in this dimension and part in another. And sometimes it all comes together in one night and all those phenomena happen at once. We've been out under the stars where we've had objects that have done electronics, people who've had remote views in their mind where there are 10 people see or hear the same thing, a craft then appears that everyone sees, et cetera, and so on and so forth. Because the whole gamish of sort of phenomenon. And then there'll be beings that are moving around it that aren't physical, but that are shimmering, almost like a subtle hologram moving around the desert or moving around on the beach or wherever we are. Really amazing stuff. What I found is that people have expectations that are based on, let's go to Starbucks and have, a croissant and a latte. There's other ways that they communicate. And a lot of it is because that's edifying, that's instructive. It opens up another dimension and aspect. And part of it is just practicality. If you're in what's called a hostile theater of operations, using military speak, which would be called Earth, that has space-based weapon systems that are all out there already deployed since 1965. I know guys who designed them. That when these objects fully materialize, will target them with an electromagnetic scalar weapon that goes faster than the speed of light. Believe me, it's not the 50s and 60s anymore where they just would materialize and land everywhere. Now, they do sometimes, but it's risky. So we have to operate with that understanding also. So there's another understanding I want to bring to this that people do not like hearing, but we've developed systems that unfortunately are approaching parity transdimensionally with what some of these civilizations have in terms of technology, which means that we are a threat. And it also means that, not that the intelligence community can't be everywhere at all places at all times, believe me. Unfortunately, when I'm around doing something like this, in all likelihood, it is monitored. But you guys, this is why my whole idea is to squeeze the tube of toothpaste and get it out. And then I become redundant and unnecessary. If I drop dead, doesn't matter. Because you guys can do it, and they cannot keep track of thousands, tens of thousands of people now who understand or attempting to do this. And my purpose is just to teach and to let people understand how this happens, and then go do it yourself.
The key point to take away from this is that our galactic families are no different than the humans on Earth. There are humans on Earth who demonstrate qualities that might be considered more intelligent or less intelligent. There are humanoid forms of different sizes, shapes, colors, and language. There are aspects of life that are not humanoid, but demonstrate their own sense of awareness and connection, even though humanoids may be unable to communicate with them. There are aspects of life that are life-honoring, life-affirming, and also those that are life-harming. Our overall human collective experience upon Earth is a microcosmic exploration of our macrocosmic galactic universal existence. One's individual human life path is a microcosmic experience to the larger microcosmic experience that is human upon Earth, which is an exploration of the macrocosmic universal existence. This rationale can be taken to even more microcosmic levels, as the exploration of cells and their interaction within the human body, and so forth. How we treat others in all their uniquely different, yet equally beautiful aspects, is a reflection for how ready and prepared humanity is to welcome our galactic families. How disclosure manifests in the coming moments of now depends upon one's willingness to be the example amidst all humans and all aspects of life upon Earth. How quickly this takes place depends upon humanity's willingness to choose, once and for all, to end the charade of separation and fear that political, corporate, and religious leaders have been seeking to perpetuate within humanity. All one has to do is choose, and then be the model of that world as though it has already happened. Indeed, it already has happened. In health news for the week, an article appearing on the NutriLover.com website on March the 12th offers an insight that may be great for first aid consideration, but also for overall good health. How many times have you had those situations where you cut yourself and the bleeding just never seems to stop? According to this article, take a little hot pepper, cayenne pepper, and put it directly into the bleeding cut or laceration. The bleeding should stop within 10 to 15 seconds. Cayenne tincture should be reserved for small cuts and scrapes. If it is a larger wound, take a teaspoon of red pepper powder dispersed in a glass of warm water and drink it quickly. Cayenne is a powerful styptic, according to the article, a substance able to stop the bleeding when applied to the wound. It does a quick equalization of blood pressure and blood clotting starts. Not only to stop bleeding quickly, it also disinfects the cut, so you don't need to worry about infection. The article refers to a doctor and adds that Dr. Scholz strongly proclaims that red pepper is #1 when it comes to first aid. It should be used whenever there is a problem with blood loss, illness, clots. There are vitamins in red pepper that can destroy bacteria and increase the immune system. For those experiencing high blood pressure, cayenne pepper, either in capsules or a little placed under the tongue, can help to reduce blood pressure within about 20 minutes. There is a reason why many cultures throughout Asia, India, and others have been using spices regularly in their diets. Only now are the benefits becoming more widely known. As Western governments that are still under the control of the international banking cabal seek to impose a harsher reality upon its citizens, ingenious people are coming up with increasingly more inventive ways to support themselves and those around them. The solutions are not necessarily more expensive either. They are solutions that are outside of the box and became a reality because there were people who were ready to look at a situation and find a solution for it. Some of these solutions involved the supply of food, either for oneself and one's family, or perhaps for a larger group or community. Solutions for the provision of food become even more important as people become more aware and informed as to how the food supply is being contaminated. This contamination has been for the purposes of keeping people ill and therefore dependent upon the big pharma, big medicine system of illness, while also keeping people distracted from the more desperate actions of the global cabal. Aquaponics has been an idea that has been around for some time, but most have been unwilling to consider it. Perhaps it was too expensive or too time-consuming. As one begins to consider how much time, energy, and effort is wasted tending to various illnesses, one begins to contemplate that those efforts may now be better spent on creating and maintaining health as opposed to dealing with anything that is not health. As I wrote that, I realized that this last sentence was meant as much for myself as it is for some of the listeners. An article appearing on the upriser.com website reports on how it is possible to set up one's own aquaponics farm on as little as 25 square feet or roughly 7 to 8 square meters. A YouTube video was first released around mid-June of 2013 and offers one approach to aquaponics by a family that took an idea and improved upon it. Beck Bembridge interviews Coley Davis, co-founder of Portable Farm.
No need to add soil, pesticides, or even water to this 6 by 8 foot garden, which produces over 100 pounds of fish and 400 vegetables a year. What kind of food facility is this? For one of our next 500 companies, it's a system about to revolutionize how the world eats.
You are literally at the front edge of probably the most important technology that's come down the pike in food in a century, and it will impact more people over the next 25 years than anything else we know of.
Portable Farms makes on-site food production facilities using aquaponics, a unique farming technique using fish and plants.
When you mix aquaculture, which is raising fish in captivity, feeding them, and raising plants in water, And what we've done is we've combined the hydroponic component with the aquaculture component. So we raise the fish, use the fish waste to fertilize the plants.
Coley first pioneered the concept for portable farms in 1972 while he was a student.
It started by having to clean fish tanks at UC Davis. So it's like, there's got to be a better way to do this. And I started with a dish pan sitting on top of a fish tank with sand in it. The water's coming in. Plants grew like crazy for 2 weeks, and then they didn't like the water on their fruits all the time, and they quit. So I had to figure out, how do I make this work? How do I make this work? 37 years ago, from that to this.
Over the decades, Coley engineered a patented system that automatically removes sediments from the fish tank without clogging a pump, allowing fish and vegetables to grow healthier and faster than in any other aquaponic system seen yet.
I wanted to make this so bulletproof that I could have my neighbor have this and not have Dave and Lisa call me up at 3 in the morning and say there's something wrong. So everything that we've done is to make it more and more and more reliable and simple. Make it as simple as you possibly can and still work.
Although a lot of engineering goes into a portable farm, like its gravel size, flow rate of water, and fish ratios, running a portable farm takes no special training.
People say, well, I'm not a farmer, I'm not a gardener. I go, well, can you harvest tomatoes? And they go, well, you know. I said, can you pull a plant out? Well, you know. So I literally show them that you can take the old plant out and put a new plant in.
For such a farm that requires little work and no training, the results are impressive.
The largest unit, the 100 by 100 foot unit, 10,000 square feet, produces enough lettuce to produce 400 side salads a day. 400 side salads a day. Right? And if you added in a few other ingredients, you could produce literally 500 to 600 salads a day, and you can serve 500 4-ounce fillets every 2 weeks. These things are incredibly productive.
Portable farms are so productive because fish stay in tanks wrapped with warming material, and plants stay under a greenhouse, cycling the same water over and over. As long as the farm can get a source of light and keep from freezing, portable farms can go anywhere.
Whether it's Southern California, Washington, upstate New York, Maine, Canada, these can be put in the Antarctic for crying out loud. As long as you have grow lights, they can go anywhere. Our goal is eventually to have them all over the world.
Just a year ago, Coley and his wife decided to make portable farms their sole commitment. They wrote one press release announcing the new farm systems were available for purchase.
In 10 days, we had people from 121 countries look at our website. From all over. I'm just like, wow, what's going on?
One newspaper article published soon after compelled people to visit the portable farm's headquarters.
People just showed up. We took our website, we took our address off of the website so people would show up. We've had 4,000 individuals come through here since January.
Portable Farms had to stop giving tours in order to focus on its business, and is now working with 38 countries as well as with military bases, schools, prisons, and entire communities in need of food.
This is disruptive technology because you can now grow protein and vegetables in every city. Every city, these can be put on rooftops. These can be put in empty lots. So because you're raising food on site, you're creating it so that if you have pockets of hunger, you can put one of these units in and alleviate that hunger on the spot.
Portable farms may be able to impact the hunger dilemmas facing much of the world, including the U.S.
The statistic from Feeding America is that 1 in 8 Americans goes to bed at night hungry. That's the United States. That's an astonishing figure. And then in the world, basically 1 out of every 6 people is starving from protein malnutrition. How can you help that? Well, little by little, we may be able to put a dent in that.
A dent may be an understatement. This next 500 company may lead a global game change for food production.
Will this change the world? In 25 years, this will be part of the landscape. Everywhere you go, you will see portable. People won't notice them anymore. They'll be that pervasive.
According to the Portable Farms website, aquaponics has its roots in ancient China, and parts of the aquaponics system were developed in other areas of the world where high concentrations of people lived who were observant of the relationships that existed naturally in their environment. In China, farmers knew that land livestock waste could be added to their fields or ponds to increase production of vegetables and fruit-bearing plants. They also noticed that different fish had different tolerances to the level of land animal waste in their water. For example, too much pig or chicken waste caused many fish to die. Now, the modern explanation for this is the lack of oxygen. So they were careful about balancing their system for maximum yield and minimum fish loss. These Chinese farmers were able to refine their system so they could grow chickens in pens above pigs, with the waste dropping through along with any spilled food who were in a pen over a pond with carp in it, and then the water flowed to another pond with other less tolerant fish, such as catfish, and perhaps other aquatic animals, and certainly other water plants were grown and harvested. These systems were so-called flow-through systems, meaning that water was used once through the ponds and then released to the local paddies, streams, lakes, or ocean. The sludge from the bottom of the ponds was used on the fields, and some of the water was used in the paddies for fertilizer before it was released. When one considers that there are solutions that can be so easily implemented within any community around the world, one has to wonder how a community council could not look at these solutions and begin implementing them immediately. These are the questions that politicians will avoid, and even if they were aware of the solutions, they expose themselves as being bought out or controlled if they are unwilling to implement something that will meet the needs of a community. The link to another YouTube video will appear in the show summary with the links related to this story. One announcement for this week. I just want to let everyone know that next week's newscast may be canceled or at least delayed. Due to a travel commitment next week, I may not be able to deliver the broadcast at its regularly scheduled time, and I may decide to cancel or delay it if I am unable to work on the show during that time. I will be posting a statement on the blog at Cosmic Vision News and on the Inlight Universal website where the newscast is aired. I am also dealing with a few physical discomforts at this time related to sciatic nerve issues and a fall I took on some ice 2 weeks ago. It has been difficult to sleep for more than 2 hours at a time, so there are some energetic issues that are coming up for release within me at this time. So I'm going to have to do some processing of these energies also. So please be informed now that there may be a delay of a few days or a possible cancellation of next week's newscast. For those of you out there who are performing energetic healing and who may be willing to share a few moments to send some healing energies for the resolution and release of these energy blocked issues within me for my highest good at this time, I would very graciously receive and appreciate this support. And in this week's final words, a revealing survey was put out by a Canadian politician and appeared in my Facebook news feed this week. A member of Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper's political party sent a mail out to his constituents seeking their input. It was worded this way: what do you think? Option 1, I agree with my Member of Parliament Lawrence Towett that we must take additional action to protect Canada from terrorism. Option 2, I disagree. Terrorists are victims too. Most CVN listeners will be smart enough to see through this very loaded survey to understand what is going to happen. Most people, having been fed the mainstream message that terrorists are somewhere out there, will very likely not even consider option 2, that terrorists are victims too, and therefore will choose option 1. This is a form of consent. By answering what appears to be a very innocent survey, one that was intentionally designed to support an agenda, the people are consenting to perpetuating a war without understanding the definitions. I have spoken recently on this newscast about understanding definitions and learning to ask politicians the right yes or no questions. What is the government's definition of terrorist? The government wants us to believe that terrorists are Muslims or environmentalists or those who are anti-Israel or something else. U.S. soldiers, as longtime CVN listeners have heard, are coming back with confessions that the terrorists are not out there, but are in fact within the U.S. government and also within the Canadian government and also within a number of other Western governments. There are 2 points that I want to try to tie together this week. One is helping people to become more discerning about the kinds of surveys they choose to answer, or at least be able to understand the questions that are being asked. When the options are so obviously loaded, as was the case in this particular survey, it guides people towards giving the answer that the government wants to support its agenda. It is the same trick that lawyers use in the courtroom. They start by asking what appear to be innocent questions and forcing people to answer yes or no. Eventually, a cross-examining lawyer who is good enough will get the person on the stand to hang him or herself with the yes or no questions. When people do not have all the information, they will surrender to fear and see the terrorists as being those that a government wants them to see. As long as people believe in some kind of external threat, they will also be more willing to continue looking to a government that is claiming to protect them, even if it means stripping away the rights and freedoms of the general public. Unfortunately, what it also means is that uninformed people, usually from middle to lower class families, will be sold the glory and honor of serving in the military, serving one's country, and standing up for freedom and democracy in the world. They serve with the belief that there will be glory and honor, perhaps a career, a good salary, maybe even an education, which all sounds wonderful, until they start coming back with post-traumatic stress disorder, missing limbs, broken relationships or marriages, or worse, in a flag-draped coffin. Did those soldiers truly understand what it was they were fighting for, and did they truly understand who it was they were fighting for? Every war, at least since World War I, has been a banker-created war for profit. The illusion has been that they are fighting for freedom and democracy. The question that was not asked, however, was whose freedom and whose democracy was it they were fighting, killing, and dying for? Coming back to the survey that I just spoke of for a moment, it is the way the message is marketed these days that pulls people and guilts people into supporting a negative agendum or multiple hidden agenda. Have you noticed the mass marketing trick being employed by the U.S. and Canadian governments through the media over the last number of years? It is no longer support the war in Iraq or support this war or that war. It is only one thing: support the troops. Immediately, it becomes a loaded issue. To say one does not support the troops immediately invokes accusations of being inhuman, cruel, anti-national, and allegedly anti-peace. A well-coordinated campaign is one that pokes at the hearts of the people. As long as people believe there is a threat, and as long as their sons and daughters are fighting for that illusory threat, and as long as they believe in the honor of that illusory fight, anyone who dares say a word against troops is on a one-way ticket to hell. Here is where I am torn. Are we helping or harming the soldiers and the peace movement by our proclamations of support for our troops, when perhaps the proclamations should be for peace by exposing all who financially profit from a state of peacelessness. Did you observe that I did not say protests against war? I am trying to change my thinking to create the thing that I do want to experience, as opposed to focusing on the negative aspect that I do not wish to experience. Soldiers are, first and foremost, human. They make their choices according to what they believe their life path is in the current moment of now. They may not be fully aware of what it is they are doing and why. They do deserve our support to help them awaken. When we stand and cheer at parades, or when we stand in honor as a funeral procession goes by, what is it that we are perpetuating? There are questions that need to be asked. And families ask why their sons and daughters had to die and be taken away from them. We try to be gentle with those families by painting the glory of their service so the family can try to find some comforting closure. Unfortunately, I do not believe that this is giving the family the closure they need and deserve. Their sons and daughters did not need to die in the first place. They fought, they got injured, or they got killed because there were people who were not strong enough to stand up and start asking the questions that needed to be asked. We are honoring soldiers who fight for the very people to protect the system that enslaves us every day of our lives. Now, I can just feel the anger starting to come up within some of you. If so, this may be a good thing, although I am certainly not having any joy in doing so. It might be a gentle suggestion that we honor the human being for being willing to serve, but also start raising questions that may help them to understand what the real battle is and who the real enemy is and why. And I hesitate in using the word enemy because they are merely souls that have forgotten who they are. People who are thinking about serving need to do research and to understand that soldiers are coming back very damaged if they come back at all. The suicide rates are allegedly very high, although this is not reported in the media. A recent story indicates that drone operators are quitting faster because of working conditions and stress. There is no longer any glory in serving, at least in the bankers' army. If all the soldiers who have the courage and willingness to serve were willing instead to serve in militias and be prepared to stand on guard for the people instead of the bankers, or use their knowledge of drones to crash the drone program. Better still, if every soldier just quit and refused to serve in any kind of fighting group. The weapons are not useful so long as there are no soldiers prepared to use them. Question everything as compassionately and as peacefully as possible. There will be some who react negatively. This is their core issue coming up to be addressed and hopefully released. Just so there is no doubt, I want to be clear to any CVN listeners who have served or who are currently serving. I honor the human that you are, that you have the courage and the strength to be willing to place yourself in harm's way for the people. I gently ask that you take the time to research more and understand, however, that the people you have been serving has not been the people you thought you may have been serving. Soldiers, millions of them worldwide, men and women over decades of battles, have given their lives. For what? Is our world any more peaceful now than 5, 10, 20, 50, or 100 years ago? The nature of the battle has changed, and the nature of the enemy has changed. But generally speaking, the answer is no. Our world has not become better, and in fact has only become worse. So what is it that we are claiming to want to experience on our planet? If peace was profitable, you can be sure our leaders would have created it by now. As long as there is money to be made, and as long as there are souls who are willing to blindly follow orders without question and cause harm to humanity and our planet, we will continue to experience that which many are now saying they no longer wish to experience. So, how do we help the troops to awaken? How do we really show our support for our troops in a way that ultimately will save their lives, their relationships, their families, their health, and their peace of minds and peace of hearts? Who is more courageous? The one who takes a gun and kills an innocent halfway around the world on an order by one who has arbitrarily declared another to be a terrorist, or one who is willing to risk torture and incarceration by resisting the structures of enslavement that have been harming humanity and our planet? To answer the survey earlier, both answers would be correct, so long as we understand who the real terrorist is, why this is the case, and who are being victimized as being labeled as terrorists because they do not support the profit agenda of those who have hijacked Western governments. Create a wonderful week until our next moment of now. So that is the unfolding consciousness news around the world this week. Cosmic Vision News is a part of the Enlight Universal group of programs. Links to stories used in this broadcast are published in the show summary on the blog at cosmicvisionnews.com, on the CVN Facebook and Scene pages, YouTube, Google+, and also on Twitter and LinkedIn. Thank you for sharing your time with me. I'm Jeffrey West, reminding you of the words of Mark Twain. It ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. Until our next moment of now, stay grounded in love, hold the vision of light and peace in your hearts, and keep those eyes to the skies. Disclosure is unfolding all around you. Namaste.